Safety and Public Works Committee meeting for September 15, 2020. The purpose of the committee meetings are for the city departments to pass along information to the city council and discuss initiatives listed on the published agenda. On ordinance, the committee consists of the mayor, members of the city council, and the city administrator. The ordinance mandates the city administrator as chair of the committee. This is a public meeting, but not a public hearing. Therefore, while the meeting is open to the public, we do not take public comments or questions during the committee meeting. Public comments or questions are received in the regular city council meetings held at 7 p.m. in the city council chambers or virtually on the second and fourth Monday of each month. The first item on today's agenda is the approval of minutes for the for the Administration, Finance, and Recreation and Parks Committee meeting for August 11th, 2020. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve the minutes.
Motion to approve the minutes by Councilmember Tizer. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Judy. All in favor, please raise your hands. And it's unanimous. Thank you. Moving on to administration, item number 2, consideration of text amendments to section 3.7.9, catering permits in conjunction with special events, section 14.3.3, zoning requirements in chapter 15, special events, filming, and public use of city facilities on the Roswell Code of Ordinances. This will work.
Good evening. Tonight we're going to speak to you about some proposed changes to alcohol and special event code.
Well, let's share our screen first here.
Okay. To our special events articles in the city code. The first is our proposed changes in chapter 3, alcohol beverages, proposed changes on requirements for consumption on premises licenses, section 3.7.9, catering permits in conjunction with special events. These are subsections A and B. Subsection A reads, a special event permit applicant that does not have a current City of Roswell alcoholic beverage license and is not a bona fide nonprofit civic organization who desires to sell or serve alcoholic beverages temporarily, which will be no more than 3 consecutive days, 2 times per calendar year, for consumption on a non-licensed premises during a special event, shall employ, use, or contract with an alcoholic beverage caterer for such service. City of Roswell public special events are exempt from this provision. Subsection B, if an existing alcoholic beverage licensee desires to sell or serve alcoholic beverages temporarily, again, no more than 3 consecutive days, 2 times per calendar year, per non-licensed property, for consumption on a non-licensed premises, said licensee shall obtain an alcoholic beverage catering license pursuant to section 3.2.6 of this chapter, in conjunction with a special event permit under chapter 15 of the City of Roswell Code of Ordinances. City of Roswell public special events are exempt from this ordinance. Jackie is going to speak on the next 2 slides because they involve zoning requirements.
So what this is doing is currently in the city code, chapter 14, under the Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Affairs section, this is where they have the zoning section. However, what this amendment is doing would be changing that and removing the zoning section out of Article 14 and placing it in chapter 15. And what we'll be doing with that is we have looked at every zoning classification and we're putting that into Article 15. Currently in Article 14, you don't have all the zoning classifications listed. So what this will do will be moving it out of 14 where it does not need to be, putting it in 15 for the special events, and then adding every zoning classification so that they're all addressed. Some of the changes in Article 15, in section 15.1.2 will be the new section added for zoning, and then Chris is going to go through the rest of the changes.
Thank you. In your packet, there was the red line version. I will go through all of these text changes. So if you have any questions at the end, please ask. 15.1.3, we changed E and G. E was taken out. There is no code 15.3, so that's stricken. And then we added in G, we do not sell or serve alcoholic beverages at and or events. Will make no use of city streets other than for lawful parking are not included. 15.1.4, we just removed the word ComDev and replaced it with the Special Events Division, simple text change. 15.1.6, again, is a text change, changing something from community development to the application software, which we use now is Apply For. 15.1.8 is A, B, and D, changes in community development, special events, changes in the permit fees. We deleted out that they're based on the services rendered. This is a now we pay as off-duty police and fire and transportation. The permit fee is $150. And again, section D, changing from community development to special events. 15.1.9, the original section is completely stricken. We don't any longer use sponsorships for special events. 15.1.10, we changed the insurance is $1 million rider from anybody who's having a special event in the city of Roswell. This coincides with other municipalities around us. 15.1.14, we deleted section C, which concerns signs. They used to run through community development. Now they run through special events. You have, you get 10 stickers to put out banners 10 days prior to your event, and it has to be removed the day after. And then 15.1.5 was 15 was just a, again, changing from the director of community development to the special events manager. The last page is proposed changes to chapter 15 in general and special events. What we're changing is that we're trying to manage the number of events on property per year. By this, we're going to allow four events on a property per year to sell or serve alcohol at a special event. We're also managing the number of times a property owner can apply for an event per year. This will be 2 times per year per owner or applicant per year. We're managing the number of times a caterer or other can apply for an event per year. A caterer can apply as many times as he wants to be a caterer, but if he's coming in as an applicant, he has to abide by the 2 per year as well. And then finally, all city events are exempt from these proposed changes. Generally, I just wanted to say that the changes that we're using were because we were becoming challenged trying to make sure businesses weren't coming, that these events were staying as special events. 90%, 99% of our events are through nonprofits, and they are special events. They're 1 or 2 or 3 days, and these are their fundraisers. And so we're making sure that businesses aren't trying to come in and have events and make a business outside of their already business. So we're trying to keep the special events just clean as special events. Are there any questions or concerns?
Chris, if you can unshare your screen, we'll open the floor for questions.
Doing that right now.
Thank you. Councilmember Palermo.
Thank you. So as I was looking at this in the packet and then now through the presentation, I was trying to really understand what the purpose or the concern was. And I think now I understand it, and I just want to make sure I'm clear. So basically, the concern is that a property would be used for special events ongoing. And basically this, I think we all know of, this has happened with one property. And this was if I'm understanding correctly, it seems to me like this is being brought forward to make it so that the From the Earth garden on the Chattahoochee is not able to be just an outdoor special events facility. Is that right? Or are there any other real life examples that this would stop besides that one?
Well, there was an example prior to me taking over this position. 9 Restaurant, if you remember back years ago, did the same thing. They had that grassy area and they had blankets out, and they would come in and get a permit every month or every week so that they could serve alcoholic beverages on that grassy area. They did not own an alcohol license, so they used that as a catering, and then they paid that. So it started there. From the Earth was another example. And it's not that we're saying it's because of From the Earth. It's just something that we started looking at a while ago before the pandemic. And then when we had more time on our hands, we went back. And the challenge was that we're just making sure that businesses aren't running a continuing business through the special event permit. The special event permit was made for special events. And like I said, 99% of our events now are the nonprofits who use those special event permits for their fundraisers for the year. So we really don't have any events that go on right now that aren't giving back to something in our community.
Well, and so I appreciate you bringing this up, and I think this is a much bigger conversation this council should be having, because I tell you, as I kind of think about it on things that I see as important and for the community, is first of all, given COVID, I definitely think there's benefits to giving people the opportunity to be outside instead of inside. That's something that's important to me. I also have always felt and will continue to feel, I want Roswell to be a destination. We need to make sure that's happening really safely in Roswell given COVID. But then obviously right now there's no special events permits that are available. So right now that's not an impact. But once special events are allowed to be given again, then obviously I want things to be done safely, but want them to be a destination. So basically what I feel what this is looking to solve is not something that I don't see the same issue. And I think there's things that could and should be improved around zonings, around special events, and those are different things that I absolutely will support and want to discuss. But I don't feel that a special event should only be available, frankly, I don't feel we should necessarily be defining what is a special event and what it should be, because frankly, 9 Restaurant, I'll tell you right now, I did not like their food at all. I did think it looked like just a really happening downtown area to see just a lot of families sitting on that grassy area. So I just don't see the need to change a law because people were sitting outside with a glass of wine on that grassy knoll. So again, this is not something I'm able to support tonight. I do think there's merit in fine tuning what should it be, but again, it comes down to, should a special event just be this thing that's 3 days, or do we, especially in the COVID area, do we want to create opportunities for more safe outdoor opportunities? And I think we should look for different solutions like that. And I don't have the answers tonight. I just know that I'm not able to support this yet. Thank you.
Councilmember Hall.
Thank you, Gary. I also look at it from a business perspective. Businesses are going to want to come back, and they're want to come back strong, and they're going to want to be hosting special events, and they may want to do multiple events. I would not want to hamstrap them to not be able to do or be limited by the amount of special events. Again, I'd have to understand more why we need something like this, but I'd be, as a business, I'd be out there wanting to do all kinds of events to try and drive business. Thank you.
Yeah.
I would like to say a couple of things. I absolutely agree that we need to support our businesses. I absolutely agree, especially during COVID, that outdoor special events are key. But I disagree that we don't need to define a special event. And when you decide to hold a special event on private property, 3 days a week, 52 weeks out of the year, that's running a business. So let me just say this to you right now, and this is why I think we need to look at this. We need to look at the zoning, and we need to look at the definition of special event. So right now, as you all know, I live in a townhouse off of Minhinnet Drive. I've got a side yard and a backyard that's large enough to host a beer truck and a food truck. With currently, the way our zoning reads, I could do that in my yard. Residential property, you could do it too, 3 days a week, 52 weeks out of the year. So while I am encouraging our businesses to pivot and look creatively at special events, we do have an issue with our zoning. As mentioned earlier, we had a restaurant with a grassy knoll next to it that they didn't own that property. They took out a special event permit every month, 50 or 12 months out of the year, to have that ability to be able to serve food in the neighboring property. Now, is that the answer to it? Also, currently, I'll say this. If you're a nonprofit in the city of Roswell, if you're North Fulton Charities, you can have 2 special events a year. 2. But others are allowed 52 special events a year and 3 days a week. So I do think that we have a problem with our code. How we solve that problem, I am not committed to at this point, but I do think that we need to look at it because there is an issue. And if we allow me or you, any one of you, to have special events on your residential property, so be it. That's a decision that this council needs to make. But there are inequities involved here, and there are zoning laws involved. And I will tell you this, that when someone purchases property in the city of Roswell, or anywhere else for that matter, they do their due diligence and they look at zoning, and they have expectations on what can be done to that property next door to them, across the street from them. And that is a protection that zoning laws provide. So if you all wish to choose to ignore zoning laws, well, that's a whole different conversation. But we do need to have this conversation.
Councilor Woolsey, did you have a comment?
Yes, I guess my question was to continuing what the mayor commented on is the zoning districts. I just wanted a little bit more clarification on the zoning districts where this was allowed and where it was not. And it looks like it is allowed in residential zone districts, which frightens me a little bit. If I can have up to 4 events in my front yard that I can essentially run as a business, and so can my next door neighbor. I just, I think we need to look at that a little closer.
Councilor Tizer.
Thank you. I have 2 questions. The first question for Mr. Halsey is, why do we have liquor licenses? What is the reason and purpose? The second question, back to special events and ComDev, and that is, what are other cities around us? How do they handle this? Is it beneficial for us to look at that to get an idea of what is normally done in these situations, so we don't have to invent the solution?
I can call several of the surrounding municipalities and see, try to find ones that are similarly set up to us and how they handle their different zoning. I'll work with Jackie on the zoning and get something put together. Absolutely.
Thank
The purpose of the alcohol laws, as I understand it, that historically mayor and council had done, is to make sure that alcohol is sold and served responsibly in areas that it is appropriate. I think that what my understanding of the special event, as I think Chris has said and the mayor has said, we've had abuses of the special event to get around getting a permanent liquor license. And this is designed so that you're not using that special event provision to run a business continually. There's nothing that would prohibit council from establishing beer gardens wherever it wants to establish a beer garden. You can do that in the conservation area. You can do that wherever you choose is the appropriate place to do it, and then allow that as a category. And that may be the solution that would get to what Councilmember Palermo was talking about. But those are policy decisions for council to make. Councilmember Judy.
Yes, to everybody's points here, I think that this is an important decision that needs to be made. I think it's pretty complex. I don't think this is ready for prime time this evening. I think there's a lot of things to go into it. I would like a work session on this because I think that making these decisions for the business community and also the residents and zoning shouldn't be taken lightly. And I think there's some things we need to dive into here, such as alternatives, and what it looks like. But I do agree that there's inequity on both sides here. And so I think this just needs to be looked at further. That's my opinion.
Additional questions or comments? I'm thinking this is a deferral to the next meeting. Chris, Jackie, you good with that?
Yes.
Unless the council feels otherwise.
Would that be an admin meeting, Gary?
No, be calm down.
We will have
No,
to,
I'm sorry. You're right, Olivia, it's administration. Councilmember Spano.
Thank you. So, yeah, it's not clear if we're gonna do a committee meeting or work session. Is my first question, what we decide to do. And second, yeah, I mean, it's a line between, entrepreneurial initiative and spirit and respect for zoning and expectation of homeowners. So there is a line there that we have to navigate and be clear and fair how we want to do it. So I think this requires many different angles to analyze and agree on. So I think that, they say agenda vote today. I'm not ready to vote. I would like to sit with our person responsible for events to see what really the ideas, suggestions, and then move from there. So I don't think even the next meeting, I don't think is ready for vote. I think that this will require a lot of thinking, conversations, and analysis before taking any vote and decision to move forward.
Councilmember Palermo.
Yeah, I agree with Councilman Zapata and Councilmember Judy. I feel because there's a lot of different complexities and levels, I feel this is probably a longer discussion where maybe a work session, as Councilman Judy pointed out, would be helpful. Because again, if we were just talking about on residential properties, that makes it, I think, pretty easy, pretty one-dimensional. I think actually we can handle that tonight and get something moving forward. But when there's so many different aspects of our business community, different parts of the city, et cetera, I just feel like there's a lot of factors that are going to go in. And I think there is good opportunity to improve our zoning code and our rules around this. I just want to make sure we all are looking at every angle to make sure we come up with really that best possible solution.
Any further questions or comments? So we'll get back to the council with either a special called workshop or a committee. I'll talk to the mayor about that and we'll bring it back then.
Okay, great. Thank you.
thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Jackie. Moving on to item number 3 in our administration, consideration of 2020 CDBG CV application review. I'm assuming CV stands for COVID. Process and walkthrough. Mr. Alston.
Thank you, guys. Can everybody hear me okay? So we closed our community development block grant coronavirus applications out yesterday. We received 8 applications, $485,000 total requests. The plan is, just to run over it real quick, is for staff or for administration, grants division staff to review the applications for eligibility up until 10/2, and then we're going to turn it over to a staff-led review and scoring committee. They will score those applications by October 16th, at which time you guys will have an opportunity to go in and review and score the applications if you so choose. Tonight, I was just going to run over, go through a walkthrough quickly of how you guys can log in and do that when we get to that point on October 16th. Screen here. Everybody see my screen? Yes, no?
Good.
Yeah,
Cool. Good. Okay, so this is just the Zoom Grants login screen. So what will happen closer to the time till October 16th, I will send you guys your passwords. I'll make it all the same, but I don't want to give it out here. You'll be able to go in and change those passwords, obviously, but your username will be your City of Roswell email address. And then the password you can go in and change here. It's your basic logon, simple, pretty simple, straightforward here. Once you log in, you'll see a screen like this. It's your available program screen. You'll see the 2020 Community Development Block Grant CV applications down here. We have 8 submitted. We're going to follow this path here. So the circle is what you would click on. So you click on this and I'll take you to the next screen. But if you'd like to go ahead and print those out or view those as PDFs or in a Excel spreadsheet format, you can do that here with the little box, the check boxes. But just for the sake of reviewing everything within Zoom grants, you would click on the submitted link here. From there, you'll see all the different applications that you have here on the left-hand side. You can click on these. You see the amounts here, the day they're submitted. These things will be updated as you score them, and we'll come back to that in a second. Everything in Zoom grants is tab-based, so you can go back to a dashboard, which gives you a little bit different outlook. You also have, this is the applications tab, and then there's a data tab where you can pull down individual components. Like if you wanted to know how every application answered question 2 or something like that, or you wanted to see all the budgets from each application, you could go into the data tab and pull that down. It's very self-explanatory. You basically click which components you want to download and then click the format you want them downloaded in. But in this case, you'll go into each application. We have 8 here. So home stretch here, you click on this. Oops. And it take you to the individual proposal screen. Again, everything is tab-based. So you have your application summary, your application questions, budget section, documents, and there's nothing for the extra tab. I didn't put anything there. What a lot of people liked was the split screen view, which they didn't have a few years ago. So you can go through each of these tabs and look at each one and kind of write your notes if you want, or you can go to the reviewer tools, which is really the popular way of doing the review. You click on reviewer tools and it's going to bring up on the left-hand side, it's a split screen. So you'd have your voting over here on the left. It's a drop-down box. You approve, decline, or abstain. You have your recommended amount, and then you have your scoring. And if you scroll on this left-hand side of the page, it's going to allow you to go through all 8 scoring questions. I included a copy of those scoring questions in the agenda item. And if you go over here to the left-hand side, you can scroll through each of the questions or click on any of these shortcuts to go to the budget, the documents, and the application questions. So this is a neat little feature they just added not too long ago. Also, for each of the questions, I've added reference points at the end so you can tell how they technically will line up with each application. So, regarding the organization's mission and their goals, it should line up with the application questions 1 and 2, which I have noted here. You don't have to certainly restrain your answers to those criteria. It's just some guidelines if you'd like. The following thing, once you've scored everything, you've typed in your amount, you can see right here how much they've requested. You can click next submitted applications, or you can go back to a different application if you want to do it that way. If you scroll all the way down to the bottom, this is the review tools screen, continued. You have scoring comments. You can leave scoring comments for each question, or you can leave scoring comments for each for each application here at the end. These would be available to the public or to the reviewers. They're not live, so you can enter things here and they're not going to be immediately able to see it. But if they came back after the fact and said, hey, why did we score this way, or why did the council only award us on this, we would be able to pull these comments and say, this is what they thought of this particular question. You do have private notes down here, and these will not be available in anything. So if you're just running through some ideas in your head and you want to put these, put some notes there, you can do that. And nobody else will be able to see those. If you click the the cool thing about Zoom grants is it automatically saves. So anytime you hit the drop down box or you enter a amount or you enter a score, as soon as you click off of that drop down box, it's going to automatically save. So this is what that looks like. It takes a couple seconds and then you move on to the next question. You don't have to worry about clicking a save button or anything like that. So this takes you back just to that dashboard where you see all the applications. And this shows you what it'll look like. So if you've approved the first application, you've recommended for 100,000 or 75,000 or 50,000, it's going to show up here. If you didn't approve it, it'll be red. I think if you abstain, it's yellow. And you'll be able to see this, and then there's a running total of how much money you've allocated thus far there's a total down here at the bottom to make sure you don't go over. It's all pretty self-explanatory. And then this is just so you know how you can change your password. When you log in, it's going to automatically default to this programs page or this programs tab. But you go to the account settings page, and there's a tab down here for you to change your user ID and password if you'd like to do that. I'll open it up for questions, but I did want to note that surprise, HUD let us know today. They sent Gary a nice email that we've received another $476,000 in coronavirus funds through round 3 of their CARES Act. So we'll have to do another proposal, pretty much. Do you have any questions?
Thanks, Charles. Councilmember Hall.
Thank you, Charles. That was a great presentation, and that's great news for another round. I did have a question. On a previous slide, it showed new next to some of those, but I don't think those would be new. What does new mean?
Oh, that's I guess the last time since I've logged in and since I made this, I guess this screenshot, or since I made this presentation, they submitted those at the last minute, I guess, or they went in and maybe changed them, altered them.
Okay.
Yeah, I noticed it showed it on 2 of them a couple of days ago, and then it shows it on 4 here.
I mean, clearly we know those organizations. I didn't know why they were showing as new.
Yeah, I think it has to do with when they submitted the applications, and maybe when I logged in, they could have gone back and edited something, and it's just showing that they made a change to it up until the deadline.
I think the new is popping up above the submittal, not the organization name. So it's just new information in that application.
Okay. Any other questions?
Thanks, Charles. You're not looking for any action tonight? We're just giving an update?
No, it's just the walkthrough.
Okay, question, sorry about that.
If you can share your screen, Charles, I'll be able to see the whole panel.
Yep. Give me 1 second. Stop share. There you go.
Councilmember Zapata.
Thank you. Great, Charles. So, seems like a wonderful tool. I really enjoyed. I think that will be very helpful for everybody. My question is, does the applicant can access directly to fill information on this application, or you still have to do something manually with the application, or you can use this tool, this Zoom grant, for everybody to apply directly in Zoom grant and then translate to you and then to all of us who will review that, or it's 2 steps or 2 different softwares?
We should be able to do everything in Zoom grants. So I think everything can be done here, from their applications to the reviewing to the scoring. It can all be done.
Great. So yeah, this will save you time and avoid any mistakes, and I think it's great tool moving forward, and congratulations for bringing this forward. Thank you.
Any further questions, comments? Thanks, Charles.
Thank y'all.
We don't have a finance item tonight, so we'll bring that one back. Moving on to recreation and parks. Number 5, consideration to approve the postponement of the annual Youth Day Parade for 2020. Mr. Pruitt.
Mr. Palmer, I'm just going to start out real quick and introduce Rusty as he's getting ready to share his screen as a kickoff to this item. And just wanted to let Mayor and Council know that this is Mr. Pruitt's first presentation as our Deputy Director of Operations, Athletics, and Special Events. And so congratulations to him. Continues to be an excellent part of our team. It's a bummer to bring this item forward as we consider it. And I asked Rusty really to go through some of the alternatives that we looked at and trying to honestly figure out a way that we could offer the Youth Day celebration and do it safely in the midst of our response to coronavirus. And so the recommendation, as you'll see at the end, is to postpone it. But I also wanted Mayor and Council to be able to see that we did put some time and effort and thought into reversing the parade and thinking of some creative ways to offer an event to the community, and really honestly just came to the conclusion with some public feedback that brought us to the recommendation tonight. So with that, I'll turn it over to Rusty.
Okay, I'm gonna share my screen. Can y'all hear me okay?
Yes.
Sounds good, Rusty.
Okay, real quick, yeah, we ended up wanted to recommend to postpone the parade, but let me give you an overview of the parade that we came up with. Basically, we came up with a concept of a reverse parade, which I'm not sure if a lot of y'all have heard of that, but basically the parade itself would be stationary and the participants would be driving through the parade is basically the concept we came up with. What you're looking at here, the green arrows is showing Mimosa Boulevard, where we would have it blocked off at both ends. Of course, the side streets would be blocked off. The folks that were participating in the lineup would get here earlier, obviously, and they would be lining up on the sides of Mimosa Boulevard. And basically what we came up with is they would kind of be lining up in the parallel spots, and then we would be trying to space them out, just trying to keep as much distance between folks as we could, limiting the number of people in the spaces. And within those spaces, we were going to decorate, floats, or we were going to canvases, paintings, and, we had all kinds of ideas to do in that little part that they had. Obviously here you can see we had restrooms near Town Square. We had the dignitary youth officials lining up in the first slot. So we went into a lot of effort putting, it's the 70th annual. It's kind of sad that we can't do it, but we were making every effort to try to figure out a way to put it in play and do it. Down here at the bottom, we were going to line up participants in their cars and actually have them hand us a card. The Pruitt family is coming through and name all the folks in the car and come through and maybe hand out bags of candy at the beginning to give to them. And so that's just to give you an idea of what we were planning. And I really think we could have pulled it off, but in the long run, the safety in COVID-19 was the factor that was going against us. And there's just really no way to guarantee public safety because we could just have so many folks walk up. I shifted to the next one is the participant survey. So basically in the last 2 years, we had 106 roughly folks that have consistently participated in the parade. And we did a survey monkey with them, just asking them a few questions and how they felt. And this particular one, should the city of Roswell plan a Youth Day event as described in above or postpone until a traditional parade can be done? And you can see they were acceptable to the reverse parade, but most of them still wanted to postpone the parade. You can see the numbers there. Out of 106, we got 37 folks that applied back to us. And then, of course, the protocols over on the right would increase your comfort level. And, they were kind of what you would expect. Going to the next slide. We anticipated if you were required to wear a mask, yes. 24 and 13 were no. And then on the right side, if the parade were postponed to a later date, would you feel more comfortable? And you can see that 34 folks jumped up there pretty quick. And so we kind of all felt the same way that although we want to do it because it's the 70th year and, it's a great tradition that we have, we took it to the commission. The commission agreed. They recommend here, you can see on this sheet, recommend moving this item to the September 15th Administrative Finance and Recreation Parks agenda. The Recreation Commission recommends postponement of the annual Youth Day Parade. And we will reassess in January 21 for possible spring date. So with that, the staff is recommending the same thing, consistent with the commission's recommendation. Staff recommends moving an item to the next available council meeting and postponing the annual Youth Day Parade. So with that, I'll open up for any questions or,
Rusty, if you can unshare your screen, thank you.
yeah, there you go.
Councilman Palermo.
Excellent, thank you. Rusty, first of all, congratulations. So definitely a tough first topic. You know, obviously everybody's always looking forward to Youth Day. I just want to say the reverse, great idea. I didn't know what that was, never heard of it. So thank you for explaining that. Definitely very creative and clever. So I think that's a good idea to perhaps have to consider at some point. But certainly I'll take your recommendations and all that. So I'm certainly supportive of staff's recommendation here.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions or comments? What are you looking for today, Jeff?
This one, we need to move forward to the next available council meeting just to take an official council action on it. You know, with this move tonight, if we do forward it onto the council meeting, we'll start to do some outreach to those that have asked. We've received a couple of phone calls and emails on whether or not we're going to officially be doing it. That's what we've done with the past special events that we've chosen to cancel or postpone. But I'll defer to legal if that's necessary, or if we can take council direction tonight and work our way through it. Either way is appropriate, and it's up to either legal or the council.
Motion.
I would just like to make a couple of comments. First, Rusty, thank you so much. You're doing a great job already. Great presentation. And I'm sorry that this was your maiden voyage. As you all know, anybody that's lived in Roswell for more than 5 minutes knows that this is a beloved event in our city. I know many people that have worked tirelessly on this event. I have known many people that over the years that were extremely involved in this event, but also most importantly, I think these kind of events are what makes the city of Roswell a home. And I hate it that we have to postpone this, but I really agree with you and the Rec Commission that for the safety of our citizens, our employees, we really should postpone it. So I'm just hoping that we have a nice March event, and then we'll have another October event next year. So my fingers are crossed that COVID will be behind us. But thank you for all the hard work that you've put into this and all of the considerations that you've made to make the event happen. You guys are awesome. Thank you.
Thanks.
Gary, can I motion to move this forward to the next council meeting?
Motion moving forward by Councilmember Judy. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by the mayor. Any further questions or discussion? All in favor, please raise your hands. It is unanimous. Thank you. Thanks, Rusty.
Sure.
Item number 6, discussion about visitors accessing Old Mill Park. Mr. Leatherman.
Thank you, Mr. Palmer. I'm going to start our PowerPoint presentation here. And Mr. St. Brain, who's been leading portions of this effort, is also on the call with us today. And this is a report back from a previous council meeting. Councilmember Palermo, Councilmember Hall requested some additional information as it relates around the Mill Village, and specifically around some parking issues and use issues in and around Vickery Mill, the covered bridge, and the waterfall area. So a portion of this is just some overview of the work that some of the task force has been doing, that Joel's been leading, and then also some of the report back items, and then a request for some additional direction from mayor and council. Just by way of overview, the Mill Village Task Force has been working over the summertime, addressing a number of issues related to the Vickery Mill area and some customer and community concerns, primarily around traffic and illegal parking, trash, littering, alcohol consumption, use and sale of drugs, public urination, fires, portable grill use, trespassing, law enforcement, and overall safety. And we covered many of those issues in a previous committee meeting and talked a little bit about the signage. As you recall, there was some concern about a portion of that sign, which council did give us the direction to amend, and you'll see that amendment there on the sign to the right. Additional work that has been done. We've corrected some of the Google map and the platform issues where if you were to look for Vickery Mill on any of those platforms, it would take you to a different parking lot, not our parking lot, but potentially up into the neighborhood around Sloan Street Park. That has since been fixed. Over the summertime, we increased our police patrols on public streets to help with some of the illegal parking issues. We increased police presence inside of the park, including some ongoing collaboration with the National Park Rangers, and that's been a great collaboration in helping us with some alcohol issues on what is their side of the creek. We added the additional of a mill attendant during peak hours to address the trash and some of the other issues that we were seeing along the area. And we were working with Fulton County and have worked with Fulton County to install some keep off signs on the sewer pipes that act kind of as a secondary bridge that aren't really supposed to be used as bridges, that people were using upstream of the waterfall area to cross and also downstream of the waterfall area to cross the creek. And so that was based on some of the short-term action steps that our community was really looking for down in the space. And really the intent is, as we start to see the mill area slow down quite significantly as we enter into the end of summer and beginning of fall, these are elements that we will pick back up in May from an operational perspective. We will continue to keep monitoring the facilities. As you know, October and September even can kind of swing in temperatures where you'll have some really warm days and some cool days. And so on those warm weekends when it's warming up, we'll be out patrolling and making sure that we take care of the trash in our parks and facilities. Some additional short-term action steps, just in summary, we did an evaluation by our traffic department, and that evaluation showed no need for additional no parking signage. That was very specific to the parking signs related to surface streets. That doesn't take into account any policy conversations that we'll have regarding around residential parking. The increased police patrols show that the majority of the park users are families, not an all-out party, as we reported by some of the residents and some of the guests. Citations at the city side were on city property, mostly for parking violations, and National Park Service was dealing with citations mostly with possession of controlled substances and possession of alcohol by minors. And then with the declining visitation in numbers, we'll start to see some of those issues start to subside just as the volume starts to drop and school gets back into session and the weather cools. As it relates to the report back, council requested staff to provide some examples of communities that regulate parking or prefer parking from residents. And that is a piece of this next portion of the report back. And we looked at the City of Atlanta's residential parking permit. You can see the map there. Those are the different areas of Atlanta that have a high impact either of visitors for a variety of reasons or potentially limited street parking and street access. The criteria or the summary that the City of Atlanta uses, the overall purpose is to ensure adequate on-street parking for the residents and visitors. Motor vehicles bearing special parking permits may be parked in excess of the time limits that are posted. There's an annual program costs. There's an enforcement element under a contract with which is Atlanta Plus, and they're responsible for the enforcement of the on-street parking regulations. And I think what was most helpful was the criteria for determining actually putting the permit in place. And I'm not going to read in finite detail. It's also included in your packet. But for the City of Atlanta, there is a specific criteria that they use to evaluate how they're going to be putting in a permit parking area. And I think that would be important for the city to consider if we move forward, that we have an evaluation criteria that we use. This is outside really of kind of the knowledge base of recreation and parks, and we would look to others, including police and transportation, to help us make recommendations in this arena, and then what potentially state limitations at state law or local there would be. We also looked at Key West, Florida, and their residential permit. I think this is also very similar to kind of what we experience in some of our park facilities. Key West is a tiny island. They've got a lot of visitors and seasonal residents. They use their residential parking permit program that grants residents to park in their city lots once a day up to 4 hours. And so it gives them that capacity as a local resident to use those lots. They have a total of 7 parking lots on the island. So you can kind of think about the Mill Village being our one little island that we have some of the constraints, and we could consider some sort of residential parking concept around that space. Residents of Key West, property owners and active military that are stationed there have access to those permits. And Moving forward, a couple of just recommendations before I take any questions, and again, Joel is available, is for next steps. Is should staff be reviewing the paid parking options down at Old Mill Park? And is that something that you're looking for a recommendation from the Recreation Commission to evaluate? And do we continue to pursue a residential parking option for the areas surrounding Old Mill? And if so, I think we've got some more work to do that I would like to pull in some subject matter experts, including police, transportation, to start to really look at those criteria and the cost associated with this type of program. I would say that in my experience, if we look at paid parking options down at the city lot, we also need to be looking at the potential impact that has in the surrounding areas. And in some cases, having paid lots also starts to displace some of the pressure that people will choose not to pay potentially a $5 parking fee. And that has extenuating impacts to the surrounding potential residential or commercial neighborhood in and around the park area. With that, I'm going to stop sharing and then be happy to take any questions or get some additional direction from Mayor and Council on this item.
Carrie?
Thanks, Jeff. Great presentation. Councilmember Tizer.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff, and thanks to your team for doing the work. You know, I've spent a little time in the last couple of years trying to understand parking and how it all works, and I think you're correct that if you were to put a fee on the city lot, all you do is spread the parking to exactly the place we don't want it. And so my thoughts would be to look closer at the resident parking permits, you know, the resident parking permit only concept, and see how that might work through. I think that would help a lot for a number of different reasons. But I might suggest just focusing in that direction.
Councilmember Hall.
Thank you. And thank you, Jeff. Great presentation. Do you have some feedback from the residents as to any of these options that you presented, or you're presenting them here first before you go out to the community?
We wanted to get direction from Mayor and Council. Our last committee meeting was really to bring back this item and start to discuss what the potential options were, and then get some additional direction. And then Mr. St. Vrain's got connections within the local community that he's been working with, and others that we can start to work on. I think kind of from the technical aspect, from a staff recommendations, we need to look at, you know, the administrative function for how a permitting process would work, and then also a criteria for how that would work. And then to your point, you know, what are this is a direct impact to the residential community. And so what are they thinking? You know, when are the impacts, when's our peak time, and try to center in on how that functions. I think it's also, in my mind, I'm thinking if we can set criteria that that can be duplicated in other areas, I think would be helpful. I think of other items like transportation, they have, you know, I can't remember quite the word, but there's speed reducing criteria for putting in different elements that reduce speeds in neighborhoods. And they have an evaluation criteria that they go through so that we're looking holistically at options for the city, but then also solving a problem if they're one that needs to be solved in and around Sloan Street and Vickery Mill.
Councilmember Playroll.
Thank you. Mr. Leatherman, appreciate this deck, this information. I think very, very helpful. I have a comment and a clarifying question. So my comment is I agree with Councilman Tizer's comments. So basically his suggestion and direction, I think, is more of the direction I'm more curious about as well. So I certainly second all of his comments. My clarifying question is, if at any point in the future this council chose they did want to pursue a residential parking type solution, it's my understanding, based on what you presented and what I've seen, that is something that could be required in a certain parking lot that's owned by the city if the city chose, and also or could be pursued on streets, in just certain streets. Is that accurate?
That's my understanding for how various programs work. I honestly don't know if there's limitations within, you know, any of our local ordinances now or state law. I'm mostly just familiar with other programs and those that I've read. But that's kind of my understanding is we've got a couple of options that we can pursue. And as you saw from Atlanta and from the other example in Key West, there's kind of two different solutions there, which is why we pulled those, because it kind of gives you a general idea of the spectrum that we could be tackling this from.
Councilmember Wilsey.
Yes, thank you. And Jeff, thank you for the work that you've done and your staff and the community members that you've worked with as well. I think that appreciate all the facts and the data that you've brought. A question, just if we are to look at a residential parking fee, one consideration or concern that I would have is, are we going to do that by vehicle, by family? How, what are the logistics of how that's collected and how does it apply? I imagine if you may have family members with several different cars who are coming at different times, or their children are, their teenagers are coming. So, how would we handle something like that? I think it turns into a lot of things to consider, a lot of moving parts.
Councilmember Johnson.
Yeah, Council.
Yeah.
We'll see.
I apologize if I'm breaking up a little bit on my end. Is it me? It might be.
Councilmember Wilson, one of the ways that that's done is a sticker that goes on the car. That's what they do in downtown Atlanta. And so if you have 4 cars, you need 4 stickers. However that all works out, and that's, I think, what Director Leatherman is saying is he wants to get those that know this work better to go look into that.
Take a look at it. I was, is that for a fee per sticker, or is it do you get it's a lot of just logistics I think we need to look at.
Okay, well, I think Jeff, we lost Jeff. Councilmember Spada.
Thank you. So, yeah, I agree with Councilmember Tyser and Councilmember Palermo that I think that first step is to focus on the parking on the streets, on the residential area. It's a neighborhood, historic neighborhood with very narrow streets and very, not many options for parking on the garage or the house. I think that would be the first step to focus on, and I think that I will support this idea to start with the parking, to taking a look on the parking on the street, on the residential area. So, and unfortunately, I guess nobody went to Key West to take a picture of the sign there. I saw a sign of downtown, but I guess nobody made it to Key West to take a picture of the sign. Maybe next time someone can volunteer to go to Key West to take this picture.
Field trip.
Any further questions or comments? Jeff, did you get what you needed, or do you need?
Yeah, just in summary, what I'll do is I'll take this back with the committee and continue to work on the items, and then schedule another report back with the findings, and then bring that back to a committee as we start working on it. And just so you're aware, we do have representatives from RDOT and from PD that have been working with our staff on this, and we'll continue to lean on their expertise as we're starting to kind of get outside of the park world and more into the parking and management of residential streets as we move forward.
Councilmember Palermo.
Thank you. Mr. Leatherman, that sounds great. One other thing that might be worth considering as well is as this council would eventually have to think of cost benefit analysis, et cetera, of just thinking about what other events, what other areas might this be something that's valuable. Whether it be maybe there's a certain event that fills up at East Roswell Park. I know with Riverside Sounds, there's challenges because Fulton County residents need to have benefits there. So that's not as good of a use case unless there's certain exceptions, but just any other areas or situations might just be helpful. And this council can brainstorm it as well. Just because I think the Mill Village is a great current use case, but at the same time, if this council chooses to go in that direction, I think there's the potential of there being other benefits citywide as well.
Yeah.
I would like to add, and part of this might be a clarifying point from you, Mr. Leatherman, but I want to make sure that we've got 2 separate issues here. One is parking on a public street, The other one is parking in a city lot. And the reason why I say that is I cannot support cutting off the mill to any residents. So you all and I could not go down there. We could not park a car in the city parking lot and enjoy that park that our taxpayers purchased. So to me, that's separate. So all of our citizens should have access to our parks, and that would logically be through a parking lot. So to me, the separate issue is the city streets. And I think that regulating, and I think Councilmember Zapata had a good point, when you're regulating in an area that the streets are narrow, people don't have garages, they're historic homes. And so parking is limited. I'm fully supportive of that, but I am not supportive of city parks being excluded from our taxpayers.
Councilmember Kennedy.
Yeah, Mayor, just to clarify, my comments were based exactly on that. It's I was addressing the narrow streets through the Mill Village, and similar to the way several places in downtown Atlanta or downtown Chicago handle it. I'm not prepared to deal with the city parking lots at this time.
Councilmember Palermo.
Thank you. Yes, I also want to clarify, I only agreed with Councilman Tiser's comments because I knew he was also thinking and agreeing that without a doubt, we should never be excluding any Roswell taxpayer from easily accessing any Roswell park. I think there's still relevance for streets as well as parking lots because of the issues and the challenges we see, as well as the overflow risks. But at all times, anything I support would be for all Roswell residents to have equal access to the same parking permits, whatever it might be. And again, there's obviously a lot of logistics, and this council has made no decision, nor have we seen any details, but just want to share those different views. But I think we're all in agreement with the mayor's comments.
Any other questions or comments? Good. Okay, we're good. More to follow. Thank you. Moving on to other items. Item number 7, proposal to adjust occupation tax rates, business license. Councilmember Palermo.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Palmer. So this one we've obviously had a number of different discussions, and really I want to give some background and my thoughts. So this year we learned that the highest margin industries pay 1/3 the tax in similar cities, and we also learned that part of what led to that discrepancy was the fact that actually the highest margin businesses received a large tax decrease. And so many of our small businesses didn't receive a tax decrease, and our homeowners received a tax increase. And so that's something that I really feel should just be discussed and should be something that we should need to be aware of, because ultimately this council can certainly decide to support companies with the highest profit margin having that large decrease and not giving a large decrease to our small businesses, and having our homeowners pay for that tax decrease, because that, if you look at the numbers, that is what it ended up equaling out to. So that's something where obviously I've raised, I see it as an issue. I don't think it's fair that taxpayers homeowners had a tax increase that ended up being basically about the same number and fully paying for the tax decrease that went to these highest margin businesses. So I wanted to bring that up. I brought up a suggestion that I felt really I felt improves the balance on and also takes into consideration different concerns as well. And happy to discuss that. Ultimately, it doesn't sound like there's support with the majority when it comes to really wanting to address this imbalance. So I'll not be requesting a vote on this item tonight. But at the end of the day, the tax balance is a decision and is a policy decision that different communities have. And what we've learned from looking at this information provided by staff is that we have other similar cities in North Fulton that use the gross receipt tax method. That's the same one Roswell uses. So there's an apple to apple comparison. And then what we found was those cities, especially in looking at the highest margin industries, have that higher tax rate. And at the same time, they have lower millage rates for homeowners and really all property owners. And so we in Roswell have the opposite. And it's something where I just feel that should be discussed. And that's basically what I brought. I'm happy to kind of talk through anything, but again, it's been made clear kind of where people stand. So I'm not calling for a vote tonight, but do feel this is something that absolutely should have been discussed.
Councilmember Tyson.
Thank you, Gary. Just a couple of comments. I just wanted to make it clear that, and we'll be discussing this on September 29th. There is a work session that's been called to have this exact discussion. And so if Councilmember Palermo is in agreement, we can just move on and we'll have the discussion at that point. We need to talk about what a tax increase means and what it doesn't mean. We need to talk about some of the errors that exist in the state formula. I prefer to do all of this on September 29th when we have a work session that we can all be at, we can all focus on, and the public can be part of. So I'd like to ask the council to defer the rest of this discussion to the public work session that the mayor has been so gracious to schedule for us on September 29th.
And I've certainly said all my points, and I agree with Councilman Tizer. So this is going to be a related and part of the discussion at the work session. So I'm certainly supportive of, as I mentioned, I have no interest in a vote tonight, and certainly looking forward to the public discussion at the work session.
And we don't need a vote if the council's okay with just deferring that conversation until the next meeting. We're good to go.
So ultimately, we'll discuss this in depth on September 29th at the public work session.
Sounds good. Okay. Councilmember Zapata.
Thank you. So, yeah, I think that I'm so looking forward for the discussion of the work session, because we all know, we understand the unbalance of our tax revenue here, where 70% is residential homeowners and only 30% is commercial. So we have to understand from the top down, what does it mean and how much pressure the homeowners are getting, and is obviously on the tax increase of this budget season. So it's so important to understand first the 70-30%. Everybody has to understand that. So which I call, fair tax, and reducing the business taxes for the last 2 years, just because it was an operational mistake. I think that we need to review this. Seriously, we need to review this, because on top of this 70-30, reducing the taxes for the most profitable business for the last 2 years, by mistake, by operational mistake. I understand mistake happens, but no correcting them, I believe it's a mistake, and all is on a fair tax, based on fair tax. So I'm so looking forward for the discussion at the work session.
Okay, do you guys want to defer the discussion to the next meeting?
If we're going to defer it, let's defer.
I would like to defer discussion, but this was not meant to do political points this evening on an agenda vote or agenda. I mean, this is ridiculous. Move on.
I just
Moving on, item number 8, consideration for a resolution in support of native plants for the city's future landscaping projects. Councilmember Palermo.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Administrator Palmer. So this is an item where I believe the mayor and council has been in touch with just different individuals involved in Roswell, and just caring very much about the environment and wanting Roswell to continue to be really a green city, which I take a lot of pride in. I think this whole council takes a lot of pride, and we had that Arbor Day resolution last night, and so I think everybody has the same views from that standpoint. And so basically, What this is looking at is there's the goal of having of going in a direction where the goal is for there to be no increased spending, and really, in fact, looking at ways to save money, which can be handled and can be done through the maintenance of native plants, as well as just a number of other benefits, including stormwater, which always comes up from development. The more development that's occurring, the more stormwater issues we seem to be seeing and hearing from residents. So a lot of different benefits you see within the agenda packet. There's also a draft resolution. And I know that there's certainly concerns with that. What I want to use today's committee meeting and discussion on is really walking through that. I'd love to hear from this mayor and council any specific concerns, and really just with the goal of moving forward, keeping in mind, and when I say moving forward, I don't mean voting for a resolution tonight. What I mean is taking a step in the right direction, where I'd love to gather any feedback, any concerns that you have. I can certainly talk through some of the ones that I've heard and ways that I feel they can be addressed. Keeping in mind, the goal would be to make sure that we are able to do something that has teeth and that really does make a move in the right direction for all those reasons. So before I get into addressing and bringing up some of the concerns I would like to play a video which was mentioned in the agenda item. So it's just a video mentioning native plants and includes some.
I think we need to be on the screen. Oh, shit. 1 second.
Lydia, can you go ahead and play that?
Yes. 1 moment.
So it's just a video mentioning native plants and includes some.
I think we need to be on the screen.
Yeah, I just said that 10 seconds ago, and I sure did that. Can you go ahead and play that?
Yes. 1 moment.
As Livia pulls that up, it's a quick video, which I think does a much better job than I ever could. Really talking about just some perspectives, et cetera.
Look, we have monarch caterpillars. Oh my gosh, I was just out here last week telling someone we didn't have any.
So, video, which I think does a much better job than
it's a beautiful day. Yay, yay, yay.
Perspectives, et cetera.
Roswell's natural beauty and unique setting are undeniable. Plants native to our area are an essential part of our unique heritage.
We have
the natural
landscapes we protect and create. Oh my gosh, I was just out here last week telling someone we didn't have any. So, it's a beautiful day. Yay, yay, yay.
Our health is bound. Roswell's natural beauty and unique setting are undeniable. Plants native to our area are an essential part of our unique heritage.
We have
the natural landscapes we protect and create.
Oh my gosh, I was just out here last week telling someone we didn't have any. So, it's a beautiful day.
So,
I don't know what the rest of you are hearing, but that was scary.
Yeah, so it looks like it kept on, Lydia, it kept on just playing back audio of what was said a few seconds before. So unfortunately, we have a technology difficulty. Lydia, unless you think there's a quick way where it could be done without that, well, I'll ask if you could send that video to the mayor and council and everybody that's a part of this committee. Lydia, you on mute?
If Libya's trying to work on that, I'd like to add a few things about this resolution. I was very excited to see it. My sister-in-law and her husband actually founded the West chapter of the Georgia Native Plant Society in 2008. Georgia Native Plant Society obviously is advocating for the use of indigenous and local plant material for a lot of reasons that we'll learn probably from this video and from Councilmember Palermo. If people haven't had the opportunity to go on a plant rescue, I've been on many plant rescues, and that's where you go and save plants that perhaps a GDOT is putting in a road, and you would go and take up some of the native plants. They have plant sales and they reuse those in their communities. So anyway, it's very exciting that we're headed down this path, or hopefully headed down this path in Roswell to adopt something like this for our city.
And so since the video couldn't play, Councilman Judy, if it's all right with you, I just want to give a high level summary of kind of just the intent. Is that okay with you? Thank you. So, and again, it's too bad, and I hope you'll all have a chance to watch the video, which we'll send out, and we can certainly get out there for the public, anybody watching as well, because it really just shows a lot of great points. But ultimately, big picture, here's the intent of the resolution. The intent of the resolution is twofold. The main focus is just knowing that in the future, if and really when the city of Roswell purchases plants, that we purchase native plants. There are exceptions in there. So for example, turf is excluded. So grass, etc. That's not going to be native. Another exception is anything that is fruit, vegetable, food bearing, anything like that. So those are exceptions. But other than that, looking at doing native plants and the cultivars, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. And so again, this is not changing anything that we currently have. This is not ripping up a plant and putting in a native plant or anything like that. It's just saying in the future, when we buy a plant, we'll buy a native plant. And really with that, again, the why goes into just a number of reasons of cheaper to maintain over time, less water, less pesticides, etc. The improved storm water through the root systems and other aspects. And then also pollinators and other reasons which are beneficial to just really keeping Roswell green. So that's a main part of the intent, to just in the future, when we choose to buy plants, we look to buy native ones. Number two, an aspect of this is to look at really just coming up with a plan and just discussing the fact that we have a lot of actually green space and parkland, riverland, et cetera, that's actually, you can't even access it. And the reason you can't access it is because of some intrusive plants. So it really is property that we have, our residents should have access to, and do not due to the intrusive plants. And this resolution suggests coming up with a plan in the future to work on addressing that. A lot of flexibility in how that's done, et cetera. It's just something to keep it on the radar. But again, getting back to the native plant aspect, which is the big aspect of this, some concerns that I've heard dealt with accessibility and being able to availability of those plants. In speaking with staff, I've learned a lot, and learned that at the end of the day, you certainly have some nurseries that don't have any. You have some small ones that truly focus on it, and you do have some larger ones that will have native and non-native ones, and it might end up being different ones, but there is the ability to do, and I think it's an important direction we go. So that was something I've heard. And another aspect I heard of concern is I picture not as an immediate concern, but long-term, if this resolution were passed, at the end of the day, let's pretend it passed tomorrow at a mayor and council meeting. If it passed tomorrow, that doesn't change anything tomorrow or next week. It does for the next time that we look at purchasing plants. So in the future, once we start actually planting more native ones, the concern is potentially of staff not knowing really how to maintain it and not accidentally killing it, things like that, because again, it doesn't require the same use of the pesticides, doesn't require as much water once it's planted, et cetera. And so with that, that's where in talking with Jay, my opinion is, and my recommendation as council would be, we would definitely need to make sure he has the opportunity to really oversee those certain areas to make sure that that the individuals maintaining the area are knowing what to do. And that's an aspect. We also have a number of community members that have a lot of familiarity with this, that I think would be a great opportunity to engage, et cetera. So those are some different longer term aspects. But with that, I know Councilman Judy had some comments, and I appreciate him graciously letting me go here. But again, my goal and my hope is I'd love to hear from this council any concerns, any things that we can address, because there might be something where, oh, it seems like the intent would be this. No, that's not. Well, let's clarify that language. Let's improve that, and I can certainly have that be a takeaway. If the response is just it sounds great in theory, but we just don't want to move towards this, so we want to just take away the teeth, that's where we certainly potentially disagree. But anything at all where you feel it could reach the same goal, the same intent, and any recommendations you have, I welcome it. I had conversations with multiple staff members from different departments, and really have learned a lot as I have from residents, et cetera. But again, I'll certainly open up the floor and love the opportunity to see different ways we can work together on this and really improve this resolution together to make sure that it has teeth, and at the same time is just fully focused without accidentally covering other aspects. So thank you, Councilman Judy.
No problem. For me, I think I'm going to say something I said earlier. I just don't think this is ready for prime time. I saw this first last week, being liaison to Parks and Rec. Who would probably be the most impacted by this, being the lands that we're on. We bought a house called Mimosa, which is an invasive species of plant, and for the Neorea Gardens, which didn't have one native plant in those gardens. So if we're going to ever replant those, this would not allow us to do that. And in Section 8, it calls for the start of the eradication of non-native plants after a certain period of time. I, for one, have spoken to multiple people since I've heard about this as well. I think there are definitely things such as English ivy, privet, bamboo in some places, a bunch of different things that's an aggressive, invasive plant. There's also many plants that people like in the city and see that provide color and this, that, and the other. So it's just 100% banned. What does this mean ecologically, financially, all those different type things? I think this is a very broad subject. And I spoke to one of the gentlemen that was a part of this today, and I said, look, in no way do I not support this. In some areas within the city, this is, maybe we start with gardens in different areas that move us in the right direction, maybe down by the river in different areas. Maybe we target certain things such as privet that does keep people out of these but I think this is a large area, and I hate to send everything to a work session, but when it comes here, I don't know what else to do before we can, I personally cannot support this in any way, shape, or form with the resolution that's there, because I just don't know any of those impacts that I just mentioned. But do I think this is a good topic to explore and send to staff and say, give us a staff report on this, the financial impact, the ecological impact, the impact on Parks and Rec, an inventory of what we have in the city. I don't know what's on our lands. And then at the end of the day, we can then say, all right, let's take all this data and facts and make a decision. I just don't see how we can even have a sustainable conversation this evening on this with what we have right now. I think it's a great idea. I think it's a great discussion. I think there's merit to it. I just am not in a place where I can discuss it any further this evening.
Councilor Wilde.
Yes, thank you, Gary, and thank you, Mike, for bringing this forward, and also thank you to the folks who put the video together. I'm sorry we couldn't see it today, and I look forward to seeing to looking at it a little later. It looks like a lot of work and had a lot of fun putting it together. You know, I agree with many of the things that you said, as well as Councilmember Judy. I think it's a good opportunity, good idea, and an opportunity for us to take a look at, you know, what we have and assess what the opportunities are going forward. I'm a native North Georgian and come from a line of farmers and gardeners, and I know that our plants in our gardens are a really big part of our heritage and who we are as a community. You know, I'd like to understand, there's some questions about, you know, what time period are we looking at? You know, are we going to allow certain cultivars after a certain time period? I mean, we all love azaleas, but not all azaleas are native. And a lot of developments to the species have been made since they were originally found here. So are we going to limit? You know, I think there might be some opportunities for us to, as Councilmember Judy said, have native gardens in certain areas. And I'm also told that we are already pretty far along the path, and that at some of our homes where it might make sense, there is a, and in another example, there's a Cherokee garden in Cobb County that is dedicated only to plants that the native Cherokee Indians use. So maybe there's an opportunity to follow that. I did a little bit of research on what native plants are offered, are available. The University of Georgia has some good resources there that we could all take a look at. And again, I'd like to see what some of our problem areas are. You know, I think there's a good idea and opportunity here, but I definitely do agree that we've got a lot of homework to do.
Councilman Palermo? I'm sorry, Mayor.
Yeah, Councilman Tizer actually had his hand up before me.
Thank you. I had a wonderful discussion with one of the folks who's on the video. And as I spoke with her and as I read the resolution, the way it's written, it's got some significant issues, but let's not deal with those right now. There are at least 4 groups inside staff that have a piece of this. So if I just look at the resolution broadly, Environmental Public Works certainly has a piece of this to look at and comment back to us on. Rec and Parks certainly has a large piece of this to report on. Our landscape architect, Jay, has a piece of this to report back on. And transportation has a very large piece of this to look at and report back on, because the way the resolution is written, and let's just assume that's a plank of a future resolution, it's a big issue for them. So I think it's great that we brought it forward to committee tonight. I think the right thing to do is to send it back to all those groups and staff and have them come back with their thoughts on it from both a theoretical sort of wish standpoint, but also an operational standpoint. And then we can take a look and see where we might be able to take some bites out of this issue. I just don't know what those are right now.
Mayor Henry.
Thank you. I have a number of issues. First, let me say that I am all in favor of encouraging native plants. I'm in favor of native plants demonstrating a very important part of our history. However, I've got numerous issues with the way this is written. It clearly was not written for the city of Roswell. And it's very vague. We don't have a defined list of plants native to the state of Georgia. And, you know, also, if you think about it, point number 1, plants native to the state of Georgia shall be purchased exclusively when the city is purchasing plants for landscape features of all roadsides, parks, public areas, and other city properties and facilities. So my question is, how does that apply on a GDOT road? But then when we get into the meat of this, every single one of these 1 through 8 all use the word shall. And shall means we have no option. So, for example, if someone is restoring one of the gardens at Barrington Hall, they do not have the option of replacing that plant. Every single one of these shall require, shall be performed, shall incorporate it. And shall, as you all, I'm sure you know, having been involved in ordinances here, that means there's no wiggle room there. There's nothing. That shall means it must be done. So I am all in favor of encouraging. There's a line here that gardens surrounding city buildings, there should be a plan by 3/31 of 21. And, you know, that goes to another question. When we start talking about an inventory of what we have, a plan by 3/31 of 21, I can tell you right now, this is costing money and it's costing staff time. And Councilmember Palermo, you talked about Jay Reisinger. We have another landscape architect in the city that works in community development. So it's not just recreation and parks. And the other thing too, in one of these lines, it says, whereas invasive and non-native plants. Well, I would like a definition. I think of invasive as things like bamboo or kudzu or, you know, those types of things. And I can tell you right now, the city would never purposely plant bamboo on city property. So are there other native plants or invasive plants that we need to be aware of? But at this point in time, with the way this is written, I can't support this at all. I can support encouraging. I can support when our staff looks at landscaping on roadways, parks. City Hall is a good example. My question to you, and this is just a fundamental question, and you might all agree that you don't ever want to see a flower on City Hall property again. We're never going to plant another petunia. We're never going to plant fall color or spring color or winter color, because I can tell you all of the flowers that we have around City Hall that make it look very inviting are not native plants. So if that's the direction you want to go, I think it's a very, I don't think what was presented here is a first step for us. And I would encourage a first step where we encourage people and our city staff to use native plants. I'll give you another example. Mimosa Hall and Gardens is having a hydrangea education work session. Well, hydrangeas are native. So, you know, this is a whole mind shift change. And, you know, for me, having been a gardener for years, while I respect all the environmental issues, and native plants are wonderful because they don't require the upkeep that non-native plants require. I get that. But as a gardener, I'm sorry, in my home, I am willing to take the extra time to take care of non-native plants like hydrangeas, rhododendrons, you know, all of those plants that loropetalums that I enjoy. So I think we need a first step. I think it needs to be encouragement. And I would also ask you all not unknowingly pile on work and expense on our staff and the city of Roswell right now. So like I said, I'd like to see the first step. This is the end game. This isn't even close to what would be doable for us right now. So I think we also need to be realistic, and please consider money and please consider staff. And, you know, right now we don't have people that have the time to educate our garden clubs and other groups out there. So I think that this is something that actually, as far as education goes, I think that would be a great thing for our garden clubs and our volunteer organizations in the city to take on as a citywide project, and I would completely support that. But having the city own this hook, line, and sinker, we're not in a position to do that yet.
Councilor Palermo.
Thank you. So I do appreciate all the feedback because this is exactly what I wanted. I think there is one big philosophical difference, which is what I want us to come up with is something that really is truly moving us towards being better for the environment, saving money on maintenance and upkeep, improving stormwater, and doing all that. And my concern is encouragement doesn't get us there. And in fact, I've met with these different individuals and staff, and basically staff's recommendation had been to not discuss the intrusives and just pretty much exclude that. And at the end of the day, if it meant getting to move forward to just be purchasing natives going forward, that's something where that's some of you helpful feedback. But the other aspect was to just encourage the city to purchase native, when possible, when easy. I forget the exact words, but that's something that actually is already being done in the sense that on different projects, Jay does include natives, and he has a great experience, and I couldn't have been more impressed by what I learned from Jay. The landscape individual in ComDev, it's my understanding he does it related to supporting other functions, whereas in transportation, although transportation is impacted big time, ultimately what the feedback I received from transportation is they basically go to Jay. So it ends up being Jay doing the landscape planning for transportation. So although without a doubt transportation projects are a major aspect, which also have potential stormwater needs and different aspects that benefit from the native plants, ultimately that goes to being Jay. Without a doubt, Parks and Rec very much impacted and affected. And so what I want to do and what I suggest is anything that you're feeling is costing money, is costing a lot of work, etc. Let's carve that up. Let's take that out. And also getting more specific. So for example, something that I heard from two elected officials was a concern around the historic homes. A perfect example of how do we address that? We exclude the historic homes. And so if that was something that gained support, I think that's something that's easy to do. Another thing I heard, which actually is a very legitimate one, is talked about intrusive plants and talked about the extreme danger, or danger might be not the right word, but just really the negative impact of privet and of the English ivy, if it was helpful to narrow down what should be discussed and really showing and making clear how small a plan can be, just something to show that we have it on our mind, that we would like to claim back the area of land that privet's taken, et cetera. Those are groups of feedback that I think would be helpful. And I am big on steps. So again, I think there's no problem adding exclusions, but I think the aspect of shall is important because you can get native plants for similar costs. And so if it's cheaper to maintain, therefore costs less taxpayer money and has the environmental benefits and helps residents from stormwater, because I'll tell you right now, I'm sure this entire council has had lots of discussions with residents negatively impacted by stormwater. And I'll tell you, a lot of them, they probably would not care about environmental benefits. They cared very much when the stormwater issues were impacting their homes. And they realized that, they understood that, and they absolutely deserve solutions. And I was glad when staff was able to help them. But so I think these are real needs. So what I'd like to do is, and as I mentioned earlier, the plan is nothing moving forward tonight. It's gathering feedback. This is recorded. I can listen to all the feedback and come back with an updated resolution. And the benefit of that as well is I'll plan on bringing this back probably in 30 days. And I'll want to work with Livia on the technology side so that everybody can get to watch the video then as well, and have a discussion to hopefully make progress, because if we're going to have the philosophical differences, obviously that just needs to come out. I don't want to see the can kicked down the street, because at the end of the day, every single landscaping project where we're buying more and more non-natives, that's just setting us further back where we could have been buying natives that have those great advantages. So that's why I think this is important, relevant. But again, I sincerely appreciate all the great feedback from everyone. I will certainly listen to this audio closely and work with, you know, the many residents that have reached out to all of us, you know, with this purpose.
Councilmember Zapata.
Thank you. So, yeah, very interesting conversation and discussion and points. First of all, I would like to say that it's a very nice, innovative, and unique initiative. So I think that, you know, I will encourage all of us to build up on the native plant resolution, not turn apart, just build up of what is presented here today for us. So if you believe that this is an innovative, unique initiative for Roswell. So first, you know, you start, do you believe or not? Okay, I do believe. Okay, so now how can I build up and help up to get better, in this case, the native plant resolution? So that is my main thing. And then, you know, we all love to have tons of data, but sometimes, you know, looking 10 years back, how many roses we have, I don't know how this will help moving forward, or say, okay, you know, 30% of a new project should be native plants, or 20%, 10%, 50%. I don't know. We put a percentage as a minimum moving forward, not moving back. You know, what do we want to see in projects in transportation, public works, parks and rec, and put a minimum. And then if they want to exceed that because they see, you know, it's a great advantage because it's low maintenance, which means also not only from the natural point of view, but from the economic point of view as well, is a benefit and advantage for the city. So this is how I'm looking here. You know, I hear everybody and all the points, and my conclusion is it's a great, unique idea and concept and initiative. How can we build up without complicating too much and causing too much cost to the city with the studies and analysis and time of employees? So I'm looking forward on this. I'm not looking back on this project. So I'm glad that this was brought to the attention. And I think that if we have the desire and believe in this, we can build up on this resolution easily and quickly.
So again, thank you everybody for the great feedback. I will definitely be listening to all the audio. If any of you have additional recommendations where you're saying, you know what, I'd really support it, but would love to see this update, feel free to email me. Feel free to just bring that note to the next month's committee meeting when we discuss this. But at the end of the day, you know, I think everybody, it sounds like everybody here sees the benefit. We have the ability to move in the right direction, and I hope we all make that decision to do so.
You know, just one final comment. As we're looking at this, I just want us to look at the important, you know, role that plants in their gardens and flowers have played in, you know, in our history and our heritage. I just quickly Googled, you know, one flower, daffodils and jonquils. I mean, I think those are very critical to the southern landscape. If you've ever driven by an older home and seen jonquils that have naturalized here, well, guess what? They're not native. So I would just hate to imagine, you know, a South that's not a melting pot, you know, with a variety of flowers and with a variety of people. So I just please, let's keep that in mind as we develop an ordinance and start, you know, mandating certain things.
Okay, there's no further discussion. We'll move on to the Public Safety and Public Works Committee agenda. Olivia, do you need some time?
Yes, I do, Gary.
Okay, so let me know when you're ready.
Thank you. Gary, do you want to take 5 minutes since most have stepped out, or?
Yeah, we'll do a 5-minute recess.
Okay. Come back at 6:50 and I just press record.
Sounds good.
Is everybody excited for the morning?
Good 9 a.m. It's live.
Okay, we are back. And yes, I am excited about tomorrow, by the way. Looking forward to it. Moving on to the Public Safety and Public Works Committee agenda for Tuesday, September 15, 2020. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes for the Public Safety and Public Works Committee meeting for August 11, 2020. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion approved by Councilmember Judy. Is there a second? Second by the mayor. All in favor, please raise your hands. And it is unanimous. Thank you. No items for public safety. We'll move on to public works. Item number 2, consideration for the mayor and/or city administrator to award a contract to WK Casey Standby Engineer for the 2020 Big Creek Watershed Improvement Plan, the amount of $60,000. Mr. Skelton.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Can you all hear me okay? Okay, I hope this is an easy one. We are looking to award a contract to one of our standby contractors in the amount of $60,000 to update our watershed improvement plan for Big Creek. This is a requirement that it be updated about every decade, and we have lots of reasons to do that. The regulations have changed, guidance documents have changed, the requirements for grants have changed, and we have a lot more data over the last decade that can help us build a better protection plan for the Big Creek watershed. We like to do a lot of work internally when we can. This requires skills that we do not have the ability to do. And I just want to mention, we started off with an estimate of $110,000, and in working with the consultant and really honing what needed to be done and what really needed to be done to tailor this to Roswell, we were able to get to a $60,000 price point that we're happy with one of our standby contractors. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
The floor is open for questions. What is the pleasure of the council?
Motion to move forward.
Motion to approve.
Motion to move forward by Councilmember Tizer. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Wilsey. Any further questions or discussion? All in favor, please raise your hands. And it is unanimous. Thank you. Item number 3, discussion and update of the Fleet Services Fund. Mr. Skelsky.
So this is actually the most fun that I'm going to have tonight is the next 1 minute or so, because I get to introduce Bill Bryn, our new Fleet Services Manager. And there's a lot of interesting things about Bill that he can tell you a little more about. But let me mention he is my first Zoom interview ever and our first West Point graduate that I know of. He also accepted his offer on April 1st and was the last employee, I believe, the city retained before our hiring freeze went into effect literally that day. We are thrilled that we got him in under the wire. He started April 6th, and he's had a very exciting and eventful 6 months. I think we finally met about 2 months into the COVID crisis when we could both come to work. So I'm going to turn it over to Bill and let him tell you a little bit about what he's doing in Fleet Services.
Thank you, Dan. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for the opportunity to allow me to tell you a little bit about what we're doing here in the Fleet Services Division. We've been busy for the last 5.5 months, and I'm going to share my screen here so that I can give you a little bit of an update.
Hey, Bill, we're having a little trouble hearing you. If you could speak up a little bit, that'd be great. Okay, well, once again, good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for the opportunity for me to come before you. And Dan, once again, thank you for the introduction. So we've been busy for the last 5.5 months trying to get things moving in the right direction here in the Fleet Services Division. By way of an update, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the situation, quick view of our organization and mission, and then I'll show you some highlights of fiscal year 20, the year that just ended, July 30th, and some of the things that we're looking forward to in fiscal 21, the new current fiscal year. So here's our situation. We're a small team, only about 6 people. We've got 2 heavy vehicle mechanics and 2 light vehicle mechanics, a maintenance supervisor, and a manager. The team has undergone some turbulence in the last year, and I think we've made some good progress in getting that settled down. In addition to being a small team, we have a big mission. We're responsible for the care of about 600 assets valued at approximately $13 million, and we oversee approximately $4 million annually in vehicle-related expenses.
Prior to this year, the organization looked like this. You may have seen this before, very linear, very straight line kind of organization. To try and improve the way we were able to do business, we flattened that out a little bit. We now view ourselves as a team of professionals with varying skill sets who support each other in accomplishment of our mission. The mission you've probably seen before. Let me just pick out a couple of words to highlight: safe, dependable, supportive users, competitive costs, and an effective and efficient manner. Closing out fiscal year 20, some of the things we were able to accomplish: we upgraded our tools and technology. We installed a computerized maintenance management system called HyperWeb. We onboarded some vehicle diagnostic software and scanners. We also purchased some mobile column lifts that enhanced our ability to service garbage trucks and fire trucks and things that are a little bit bigger and heavier than our standard lifts would accommodate. We took a very aggressive view to safety. We realigned some of our roles, set professional expectations, and leveraged the power of enterprise fleet management beyond vehicle financing. As it relates to financing alone, we completed 36 sale leasebacks and acquired 65 new replacement vehicles. This is what our maintenance facility looks like today. Come on down and see us. If you haven't been here in a while, I think you would be impressed, and I would welcome the opportunity to be able to show you firsthand some of the great things that we're doing. Looking forward to fiscal 21, one of our goals was to install a Napa parts store. We had a fully executed agreement on July 7th, and we stood it up operational on August 3rd, less than 30 days. One of the next objectives was to integrate the parts server and the maintenance management server. We switched that on today, so now we have a live interface between our parts system and our maintenance management system. We want to leverage business partners to contribute to our success, cultivate positive relationships. In the last 90 days, our technicians have completed approximately 40 web-based training sessions to enhance their skills. We've developed measures of success so we know how well we're doing, and we're able to articulate that both internally and to our customers. We're going to take a look at life cycle management, develop a telematics strategy, and move the fleet services business into the 21st century. Just to give you a bird's eye view of some of the things that we've seen with the addition of the Napa IBS partnership. Not efficient and more efficient are my jargon for before and after photos. You can see that we've got more things on hand which allow our mechanics to be more productive, and perhaps best of all, we can find what we have. Just another view of how things looked before and how things look today, a much more efficient system and processes in place. We're pursuing professional certification through the National Institute of Automotive Service Excellence. We currently have one certified manager. We have 2 exams scheduled for the end of September, and we are just being diligent about training our technicians and upgrading their skill sets. In order to be successful, we need to understand what success is. So we're developing performance measures in a number of different categories. We look at our backlog and our man-hour utilization. Recalls is an indication of whether or not we're putting safe vehicles on the road, and we'll continue to develop those kinds of measures of success. Life cycle management will be one of the next large challenges that we take on. The goal is to get our vehicles in the range of that black circle there so that we're maximizing the equity at the time of turnover and simultaneously reducing the maintenance costs. Right now, we're a little bit beyond that optimum time, so we'll take a close look in the next few months at getting the line and the circle a little bit closer together. As we begin to think about telematics, we're going to build on something that exists today in our solid waste organization. We're going to make the hardware and software that's in place work for us. We'll leverage the business partners to gain their expertise, and then we'll implement, train, and support to achieve some of the things you see in the icons below. And that is kind of a view from 50,000 feet of what we've got going on in the Fleet Services Division. I'll be happy to entertain any questions or comments that you may have.
Thanks, Bill. I'm glad you're here. Councilmember Hall.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Welcome. And that was a fabulous presentation. I just want to applaud you on doing this and looking at ways to improve and make changes to the organization, and also especially on the metrics, the success measures that you've started. I hope that you identify more and champion them throughout your organization, and we can continue to champion them throughout the city. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, I guess I'm recognizing people. Councilmember Palermo, please.
All right, Mr. Brand, first of all, I just want to say welcome aboard, and second of all, really impressive presentation and what you're doing. So great work, and thank you. We're fortunate to have you here.
Yeah, thank you. I look forward to continuing the good work.
Halsey.
Yes. Thank you, Bill. And again, thanks for the presentation. Appreciate the great work. I had the opportunity to visit Fleet headquarters a few weeks ago, and I can tell you it looks as good in person as it does in the photos, and appreciate all the order and the great things that you're doing for the city. So keep it up, and we're glad you're here.
Yeah, thank you. Happy to be.
And to you and your team.
Councilmember Zapata.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Brain, for the presentation. Very clear, and welcome to the city of Roswell. And this was one of my favorite slides. So I think that is one of the most critical slides to take in consideration. Besides a great job on doing the working area and organizing this, which is very important. But so just have a quick question. I would love to know on the circle, what are we talking about a range? 5 to 7 years, or where will be the? I mean, we are right now at 11.7 years. What will be the optimal? I know different vehicles, will be on a different part of the circle, but if you have a range to share, that would be interesting.
Yeah. Industry norms for light duty vehicles are 5 to 7 years. For heavier duty vehicles, 8 to 10 years. So if we can get our light duty vehicles in that 5 to 7 year range, we'll maximize the equity and reduce the expenses and turn them over before they start getting expensive.
Great. Thank you so much, and welcome on board again.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Look forward to being here.
Any other questions or comments for Mr. Brent? Yes, thank you, Bill. We'll move on to item number 4, Solid Waste Division Recycling Program Guidance. Mr. Skelton. Or Ms. Izzo.
Now this is Dan tonight. Unfortunately, you got the B team. Can you all see my screen here?
Yes.
Okay, great. And I want to start off by giving thanks to our Solid Waste Division Manager, Nick Pizzello, who has been working feverishly on the Solid Waste Business Plan, and he's in the background here for difficult questions, as is Sharon Izo, our deputy director. And just by way of history, Nick was the one who stepped in as an interim manager in Fleet for a couple of critical months during last winter and the spring until we could get Bill on board. So nobody's happier than Nick that Bill is here. Now he can concentrate on the solid waste business plan, and we've been doing that, and we'll be bringing that to you next month, I hope, for Nick to give you a download. What we wanted to do tonight was really bring forward some preliminary items that have come out of that business planning, as well as realizations that we came to as we worked through the COVID pandemic. And our goal here, and these are all going to be recycling related topics, is to review how we can best recycle responsibly and in a sustainable manner. That's our goal. And these are some preliminary things. We're not looking for necessarily any specific recommendations or feedback other than just general guidance from you tonight. And we will factor that feedback into the completion of the business plan. So hopefully we're on slide 2. And this is a critical point. The recycling market today is very different. It's changed dramatically. We're producing a lot more waste than we did 30, 40 years ago. The big issue now is contamination of recycling streams. And about 1/4 of what's recycled is estimated to be contaminated. A big landmark in this event was in 2018, China banned some imports that did not meet stringent purity requirement standards that they put in place that were new. And that was where a lot of recycled material from the United States went. That had a dramatic change on the recycling market and economics in the United States. And as another point, over the last decade, the cost of petrochemicals produced in the US has dropped significantly. Between fracking and gas production and oil prices, they're lower than they've been during most of my lifetime. And that makes recycled material less value compared to virgin material that is plastic and oil related. So this is a slide that, again, most of this information was put together as we were putting together the business plan, and we wanted to dig into recycling, and hopefully we'll be able to go through this quickly and it'll give you a little more of a picture. But the good news is the amount of material we're processing at the recycling center is going up, and that's good. That's the highest and best value for our recycling effort for the most part, because we separate the streams and we have a cleaner product. So this is not as affected by the contamination that affects most mixed curbside programs. And every ton that goes to our recycling center or to our curbside program is not going into a landfill. And that's an expensive disposal option for us at about $38 a ton. Unfortunately, our revenue at the recycling center is not having that same upward trend, and that's shown here. 2020 was probably a little affected by COVID. We were shut down for a portion of the last couple of months, but in general, that trend has been steady or dropping off a little bit. The difference between 2018 and 2020 is about a 30% drop. Here's some individual commodity pricing changes over time for some of our primary revenue generators. These are the materials that we can actually receive some pricing from. The numbers are small. I can see Councilman Palermo trying to read them, but let me just give you the bad news, which is cardboard has dropped by about 80%. That's the upper left corner from the peak to the trough. In the last year, office paper, that's the next one, has dropped 60% just in 1 year. That is, I believe, an absolute direct result of the China contamination quality standard. A lot of cardboard went there. We're fortunate in the Southeast that there are some local cardboard producers, but that's an issue for us here as well. Aluminum has dropped. That's the lower left corner. That's dropped about 56%. And plastic is actually one of the ones that's a little more steady, but you can see it dropped off quite a bit in the past year. These are unit prices per ton of the recycled product. And those are the materials that we actually can generate some revenue from at the center. Unfortunately, there's a little more bad news, which is some materials, we don't have an end user that actually pays us for that product. We have to pay to dispose of several items. And these are the major ones that we wanted to point out. And in parentheses, you'll note we just included how the fees, if there are any, are handled for Roswell residents or non-residents, because we do charge for some of these. So paint is a big problem. The price has gone up significantly to recycle paint or to have someone take paint and make a recycled product out of it. It was a great effort to try to make a recycled paint closed loop market. It does not seem to have been successful in terms of the economics. And I don't believe these figures include our labor to handle paint, but it's gone up substantially. That's the biggest single expense we have right now is disposal of paint. Fluorescent light bulbs, this comes up from time to time. People would like us to take more. Actually, the money is not the issue here. I just want to mention that capacity-wise, we cannot take much more in the way of fluorescent light bulbs due to a change that would be required in our hazardous material handling licensing. So we fall under a small handler jurisdiction. We would not want to get into the larger handler restriction because of additional regulations and requirements. I just mention it here because it is something that does cost to dispose of. Electronics is another big ticket item. That price has gone up, and quite frankly, the value of recycled electronics has come down in part because really the manufacturing technology for producing things has gotten much better. Technology is smaller, it's more powerful, they use less gold because it's expensive in the connectors, they use less rare earth metals when they can, and they've gotten better and better at doing that in smaller electronics. So there's less valuable material in there to recycle. Tires, this I just mentioned because it is, these last two are items where actually the last three, we have been charging non-residents for accepting these. But at this point, we are still not having non-residents back in the center. And so those at the moment are not affecting our operational economics day to day at this point in time. So the question is, how can we make this as robust and sustainable going forward? And what do we think would be good things for you to consider? These are the recommendations that we would put forward as preliminary that we've thought about in terms of how to make this as sustainable an operation as we can and respond to some of these market dynamic constraints that we're facing. The first is we do not think that it's really a reasonable idea to keep accepting material from non-residents without some sort of compensation or economic support from those sister cities or individual residents. And this has come up before, it's not a new topic, but the thing that's different now are the market dynamics as well as the volume of material at the center. We are at or near capacity right now without having non-residents at the center. There's still a lot of material coming in, and we were at that point and really stretched before. So in the beginning, 20 years ago, I'm not sure that the recycling center was really running at capacity, and in a way, more raw material coming into the center was potentially an economic benefit because we were getting a significant return on that, or at least some return. In this case, I think in a way where Roswell residents are subsidizing some recycling center benefits for neighboring jurisdictions. And that's just something I think the time has come to reconsider. Absolutely, recycling education campaign needs to be updated, refreshed, and we need to really bring our community up to kind of this current awareness of what's going on in the recycling market and how important contamination is. And that applies both to curbside programs and the recycling center. But I do want to emphasize that cardboard and glass brought to the center bring a decent return. And we encourage people to bring materials to the center if they're willing to do that. Once they're in a mixed stream, we still accept glass in our curbside recycling. And unfortunately, that glass and cardboard do form a contaminated product when they come out of the material recovery facility, just because glass breaks. So unfortunately, by the time it goes through that process, it doesn't have as high a value for our curbside recycler as it does for the city if we bring it to the center. The third one is a big one. We would suggest no longer accepting paint. And I apologize, this was a typo. It said latex paint in your handout. We do also accept oil-based paint at the center. Not as much of it these days. I mean, it's been tapering off in its use, but really, if we are going to continue accepting paint, we would suggest a charge per gallon that's comparable to the recycling costs that we have to pay for its disposal. And the final two are not as significant in terms of bottom line impact to the center, but I put them on there just because they do cost us money to dispose of, and there's some consideration of whether or not we should charge for things that cost us money to dispose of. And I think that's something we wanted to put on the table. We don't have a specific cost in mind, although we do have the costs that we've been using for non-residents for some time. So those are some considerations on how to deal with the recycling market. I want to switch gears to a couple of other recommendations that we have that have come up as part of really recent events in the last 6 months, and more recently than that. We were approached by a private company. It's SC Johnson. They're quite proud of their efforts to try to develop a plastic film recycling market that includes larger end users. And they have done pilot programs around the country. They've approached the city of Roswell because of our reputation in recycling, and also because we have been doing film recycling at the recycling center for a number of years. It started as a pilot program, so we're somewhat familiar that we have people who separate the bags and bring them to the center already. What they're really after is moving the needle on film recycling, and that means attacking it at curbside. And so they've got some innovative approaches for trying to do that at a curbside pickup, which we've discussed with our curbside contractor and started to figure out potentially a win-win solution that could be very beneficial for the marketplace and for the city. So we think it's worth working on this with the goal of possibly, if this is successful, developing a full circle film recycling process or demonstrating that that is possible, and hopefully attracting investment in the US to end products using recycled plastic materials. And most of you are aware, the big concern with plastics is they don't degrade. There are a lot of them found in the oceans and in our streams, which we have a river cleanup coming up Saturday, which I'm sure will generate some plastics. Film is just one portion of it, but it's something that there's a private sector interest in making that loop closed, and we already have seen that successful at the recycling center. So we're optimistic and encouraged about that, and we'll hopefully bring you something a little more tangible in the near future. The next point that I think is interesting. This is something that we think we could start doing as early as literally next week, unless you tell us not to. We think this is a pretty reasonable program to begin piloting on a small scale, and that is small commercial recycling. And this is in direct response to really customer demand. Several businesses have contacted us and said, hey, why can't I recycle at the curb? I already wheel out my garbage can. I wouldn't mind wheeling out a recycling container. And when we looked into it, there are certain locations that would meet a few real minimal requirements. And the point here is really all in bullet number 3. The locations would have to be serviceable by our contractors' automated equipment. So that means at the curb, no behind houses or behind businesses. This is not a dumpster recycling. Those folks hopefully are large enough to be able to attract a private recycling company. These are people who are operating out of small at-home businesses or some residential or business mixed parks where they can already have our curbside cans for garbage and could easily accommodate a curbside recycling can. If they're interested in it, we're prepared to offer that service, and our contractor will just pick them up as another home. And we're prepared to set those fees at $10 a month for regular service. And I think that is the end of my kind of formal presentation. I'll be happy to address any questions that you have on any of those topics and any feedback that you might have.
Thanks, Dan. If you could share your screen so I can see the panel. Appreciate it. Councilman Plummer.
Thank you. Dan, as always, great presentation, a lot of great info. And so I actually want to just share some feedback and some comments. So first off, at a high level, probably 2 things you already know about me. But Mr. Skalski, number 1, I strongly support working towards really a cleaner environment, and I love Roswell's green reputation. So obviously that's a consideration of mine. And also, number 2, I strongly oppose Roswell residents ever subsidizing other towns, non-residents, et cetera. So those are 2 strong beliefs that I have, because I know that I feel that's relevant for some of your considerations. So as I walk through and realize not by no means do I have any recommendation, if I made any decisions on where my view stands, I just want to kind of provide some general feedback. You mentioned the no longer accepting material from non-residents. So as I mentioned, it's very important to me that we're not subsidizing, neighboring towns. So it looks like you came up with 2 possibilities where you're confident that that Roswell residents would not be subsidizing. And I would want to make sure we're not at all subsidizing, other towns or non-residents. A question I have, and you don't have to give me the answer right now, just for future consideration. Would a choice C potentially be charging them per visit or per item recycled? If so, then I think something to consider, and maybe you end up looking at this closer and deciding that's something that just you don't feel you'd be able to effectively do. I just bring it up just because I would love the opportunity, as long as you're ensuring they're fully covering all of the costs. Then I love the idea of increasing our scalability and hopefully increasing revenue by doing that. But again, sole focus needs to be making sure that we're not paying for the non-residents. Obviously, I love the education aspect. When you get into electronics and tires and charging for residents, I guess here's my concern there. Is I think a number of residents end up just throwing it in the trash. And there's obviously negative environmental aspects of it just being thrown in the trash. But also my concern is if it's thrown in the trash, then we're paying towards that tonnage. And basically, especially a lot of the older electronics that are more likely to be just recycled or tossed are often going to be heavy, in which case, does it end up being somewhat of a wash or not that much more money for us to just be doing this for free to residents? So that's a thought that I have as well. And regarding the recycling pilot program, I think that sounds absolutely great. So, so really excited to see if you are able to work on a win-win approach like you mentioned. Small commercial recycling pilot program, I think that definitely sounds interesting to me, and I think sounds like a great opportunity. So thanks for sharing that. And then I guess one other question I kind of have overall is, you know, anytime there's an opportunity to increase the revenue, and examples being if we don't take something from businesses, you know, why not just take it from the business, but for a fee that you're confident is not costing taxpayers money, and same thing with non-residents. So anything you could look at where you mention, you know, if there's that ability, because I know, because one I was thinking was fluorescent lights. That's some feedback I've received from some Roswell business owners. Obviously, in this, you brought up the reason why that's a challenge. But if there's anything else where you feel, you know what, we don't take it today, but if we charge this amount of money, that would be beneficial for Roswell residents, I'm always open to that idea. I love the idea of increasing. I love the idea of increasing recycling, and I love the idea of making it more sustainable and cost effective for Roswell residents by getting that outside revenue sources. So I know I just gave you a lot, Mr. Skelski, but again, I feel you're talking about really important items, and it's something I think is really interesting and clearly have some passion for. But again, thank you to you, and thank you to Sharon. You all do a great job. And for Nick, actually, I have an email I need to send to the three of you because Nick, I've gotten some great feedback from a resident on a solid waste item. And so definitely appreciate the customer service and everything you're doing for our community.
Thank you. And if you're okay, we'll just soak it all in. We may have a few comments. You've heard a couple of those things before. The per visit idea at the center, I will just tell you that is something that we did talk about. We do think there are some, I'll call it just behavioral challenges with that. And this is just from talking to Sam and Nick. I think most of our recycling customers are believers and regular and routine, and they get in a habit. And we were thinking that the big challenge with per visits are the manpower associated with taking payments, all that stuff. It is very challenging to do on a per visit basis, especially from non-residents as well. So that's the only concern that jumped to us, just the logistics. We saw a big diminishing returns on our side because it would take a lot of administrative oversight to handle that. And two, we don't think most individuals would really keep coming if they had to pay, unless they're willing to sign up for an annual membership. And that's just our internal discussions, and we will absolutely vet that out further. So.
And so one last thing, and I have nothing else to say tonight about this. And so if the one visit doesn't work, even I guess a thought process I have, if it's someone, let's say they want to recycle a fridge, obviously there are costs associated. My point is, instead of saying we're not willing to recycle that fridge, it's more of we're only willing to recycle it if they pay this amount, and we have to be positive that amount fully covers all of our costs. But again, thank you for all you do, and I'm done for the night.
Understood.
Councilor Wellesley.
Yes, thank you, Gary, and thank you, Dan and Sharon and Nick and your entire team for all the work that you've done. I really appreciate you monitoring the shifts that are going on in the market and keeping them up to date and analyzing exactly what that means to our operations and our costs. I guess one of the things looking at non-resident recycling, I would love for your recommendations on the logistics and potential of looking for an IGA agreement with other neighboring cities. And if that doesn't get very far, then, you know, looking at charging those who want to come and recycle, but just kind of interesting in your thoughts on how receptive our neighbors, Northfield neighbors would be to that. And again, I think education is going to be a big part of this as the recycling market changes. I think if we can increase our education efforts. I think people in Roswell are very receptive to recycling more, and are open to learning ways to do it better, to continue to be better at it. Finally, thank you for responding to opportunities that are happening in the market with the plastic film, plastic wrap program and the small business recycling. Just really appreciate you always being open to opportunities to expand the things we can do to recycle and to be a greener city.
Thank you. And we will have a conversation with some of our sister cities. In fact, we already have had some of those, mostly along the lines of, hey, when are you going to open up for non-residents again? But we would definitely be interested in something that's a little more broad-based and equitable, and population has been discussed as the most fair way to do it. That's how we're paying for the recycling center. Our population has spread that out. And we'll definitely take up those discussions and keep you posted.
Councilmember Judy.
Thanks, Dan, Sharon, Nick, whole team. Excellent as always. I trust your opinions and research on these things. So usually I'm apt to take your suggestions to heart and move forward. One thing I know that is obviously the big hit is these amnesty days of taking in certain things during the year. And so maybe, I don't know if it changes the dynamic at all, but maybe there's once or twice a year where we do accept the paint, or do accept the tires, or do accept those things that, maybe twice a year, maybe once a quarter. I don't know if that's a cost savings or if that changes anything. I guess we would be taking in less, but I think that would be very popular with the citizens because people love those amnesty days. So that's just one thought I had, but other than that, I think we're on that path, and thank you.
Thank you. And you just reminded me of one thing, which is, it is not problematic to dispose of latex paint in the garbage. That's an environmentally sound disposal technique. And I hate to say it, but with the decline of that market, that may be one of the more environmentally friendly things that can be done now. People will probably not like hearing that, but it's probably true, and in terms of the economics, it definitely is. But appreciate the thought about amnesty days. That's a great idea, and I didn't mean to interrupt the commentary. Thank you.
Councilmember Zapata.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you so much, you and your whole team. Great presentation, great topic, very interesting topic, and learning a lot. So a couple of things. Let's start with paint. Now a lot of people at home is doing projects, and then you go to the hardware store and you want to paint a little piece of your wall, but they sell you a gallon. And I keep saying, I don't need a gallon. Well, this is a minimum that you can buy. So then what happened? You ended up with a lot of waste, unfortunately. So I think paint is an issue, especially when people are doing projects at home these days, that we need to address somehow, or explain, or educate, or do something about it. Then in terms of electronics, I think that the good news is now everything is smaller. You have the iPod. I used to have a laser disc. So things now are smaller, and even the manufacturers or others are interested in recycling or taking care of that. So that is a good news. Tires, help me understand here, because every time that I've been going to change my tire, I get charged whatever, $5, $10 per tire for recycling. So I don't know how big of the problem is, how many people will buy the tires online and change at home on the garage. I don't know how big of the problem is the tires, since I will assume that most of the people in Roswell will go to a place that change the tire and you pay the disposal fee right there. And then fluorescent light bulbs. Fortunately, I don't know how big of the problem is the LED lights. Everybody's converting to LED. And I don't know if this is better or worse in terms of recycling in the future. but correct me if I'm wrong, but fluorescent light bulbs might start going down the disposal of these lights, so which is good news, assuming that LED is better for recycling than fluorescent. So then, I would like to echo the comment of Councilmember Palermo when he said, look, if we have to start charging for that, most probably people will just put in the regular garbage, and this might create two issues. One, more tons of regular garbage, and two, the recycle or the ecological impact of doing that. So I don't know if charging local residents will increase the amount of regular garbage with those two consequences. So other than that, those are my comments. And again, I love learning a lot and make me think a lot about it too.
Thank you for your comments. Nothing to add. The only thing I will say is there are not so much tires that I think people are changing at home, but I will tell you, we get a lot of lawnmower tires. I've actually got 4 in my vehicle that I need to drop off that I did manage to change at home. But we also do find people who are cleaning the garage and finding tires that they didn't know they had, or cleaning up even a vacant lot and doing a good thing and end up with some tires that they don't know what to do with.
Thanks, Dan. You have everything you need?
We are good. Thank you very much for the feedback. We appreciate it and your time.
Great job. Thank you.
Questions or comments for Dan?
Yeah.
Okay, we are adjourned. We'll see you tomorrow morning.
Thank you.